Ndabulelo, did you hit the recording button? Thank you. Great. Okay. So we working into the assessment of professional competence. We're going to spend a couple of minutes, not 1 or 2 minutes, but a couple of minutes unpacking APC. And this is the slide that unpacks APC. So as we had a poll at the beginning of the session, we've got about 19 people that have never been part of any professional program. And then we've got about 9 that have been. So the 9 will know what I'm talking about, and the 19 will learn what I'm talking about. So what is APC assessment? Guys, when you are sitting for an APC assessment, and I'm talking about the SAICA or ICAS or ICANN, so the Institute APC. I'm not talking about our program. SAICA will put together a multidisciplinary case study. So they put together a multidisciplinary case study that assesses whether you are ready for an entry into the profession of chartered accountants. Let's unpack why we call it multidisciplinary. It's multidisciplinary because it's not just accounting, it's not just audit, it's all the disciplines. So accounting, audit, tax, math, strategy, risk management, and governance, incorporating critical thinking, business acumen, decision-making, problem-solving skills, ethical leadership, citizenship, long life learning. So all the competencies will be assessed using this one integrated case study. So it's one case study. So they put it together, this multidisciplinary case study. And this multidisciplinary case study, they split it into 2 pieces. So it's generally about, call it 30 pages, and then they will split it into 2. So plus or minus 15 pages, meaning the first half, will be given to you guys on day 1, which is going to be on a Friday. So on a Friday, they will give you half of the case study, and that first half, we call it a pre-released information because it's released before the day of the assessment. So it's called pre-released information. So if you hear me from here on talking about pre-released information, is that first half of the case study, or in short, it's called a PRI. So it's going to be released before or just at 8 o'clock in the morning of the Friday. And then the responsibility is on you to work on that case study, to understand the business that is being looked at in that case study. So what kind of a business, in what sector, in what industry, how do I make sure that I can relate to this company? Is it a supermarket that I'm generally walking into and understand how a supermarket works? Or is it a mine that I've never been to a mine? I don't know how mine work. So what kind of a company am I working for? Because they're going to make you as a candidate be an employee in that company. So you will be assigned a role to say you've just been employed as a newly qualified chartered accountant in this company, and it's either you are in their strategic department or you're in their finance department or whatever role they choose to assign you to. And you've got to then learn about this company from that Friday morning using that pre-released information. And this pre-released information contains the background of the company. So it will have things like where is the company coming from, its origins, its leadership structure, its organizational structure, who are the shareholders, who are the directors, who are the external auditors, are they South African company, do they pay tax in SA, what does their income statement look like, what does their balance sheet look like, They will give you information about their business model. How are they making money? Meaning they sell gold or they sell goods to the public if it's a supermarket. What is their vision? What is their mission? What are their values? Things like that. So you'll learn a lot about this company, and I guess you will want to research similar companies to understand who are they competing with. You would want to go through some similar integrated report if need be. And then on top of the background information, they will have additional emails that have been sent to you. And this additional emails within the 15-pager will say, listen, now that you know our company so well and you are working for a company, I'm going to need your help submitting a tax return, an income tax return. Or I'm going to need your help submitting or reviewing a VAT return that someone I've asked them to prepare. Or I'm going to ask you to think about how we need to account for our leases. Or I'm going to need your help because we want to open another a supermarket in another remote area, let's say Cullinan. And we want to evaluate if it's worth it. Worth it? Is it, am I thinking NPV? So they're going to trigger you, okay, to study certain things. Well, given my examples, guys, what have I triggered you to study? The examples that I've used when you guys were listening to me, what have I triggered you to study? Raise your hands, or just some of you just put it into the chat box. I've said a couple of things. Okay, Tsungi is saying leases. So what are you going to study, Tsungi? If it's leases, what are you going to study? Tsungi? Okay, I see Tanya is also saying business acquisitions. Is it? Did I say business acquisition? Because I think I said they're going to expand, they're going to open another supermarket in Cullinan. Or are you thinking they're going to buy another one? Or are you thinking they're going to open a fresh new? Is it an acquisition? But there's a math principle there. Tax treatment on leases, Helen, I agree, lease accounting, capital budget, Chiza, on that new business or new supermarket in Cullinan, understanding I-16, investment appraisal. Okay, there's an investment appraisal. Why I-16, Tsungi? Or maybe because that's property, plant and equipment. Or probably you're talking IFRS 16, which is the lease accounting. Okay, lease accounting. Atara, you had your hand up. Go for it.
Thanks, Feli. I wanted to say decision making, but I think the decision has been made already, right?
Yes.
You said they've decided.
No. Maybe they haven't made the decision. They're actually thinking, they're saying, we want to do this. We want to open this new supermarket in Cullinan. And is it worth it? Do you see the decision hasn't been made? They're contemplating on the decision.
Yeah, I see.
And then you're going to give them two things to make that decision. What would those two things be? Worth it from a number one?
From I forgot the word, quantitative.
Quantitative NPV analysis of some sort, that there is a net present value positive from this decision. And then secondly,
from a qualitative point of view.
From a qualitative, yes. Qualitative factors that we must consider. Do we have a time to run another supermarket in Cullinan? Is there a market there? Are people going to be receptive to us? Are there some regulations we need to comply with? Those kind of qualitative considerations. SAF, yes. Or SWOT analysis, yes. Those kind of things. So do you see that pre-release information over and above giving you the background of the company and say, this is what the company does, and for you to know the company very well, these are the things that we're going to need your help with. Study and make sure that you are competent on before you come to the day 6, the Wednesday, and when is the day of sitting for the assessment. Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So then it means you're going to use the Friday, the full day of Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, at least Saturday and Sunday are free days anyway, the Monday and the Tuesday to learn about this company, to research, collect data, and sit on your desk and study to make sure that you are competent in those areas that they said they're going to need your help on so that you are ready on Wednesday. So do you see, generally you will need to take leave on that for the Friday, the Monday, the Tuesday, and the Wednesday being the day of the exam. So the 4 days for every case study, generally you need to plan to take the 4 days of leave. And you need to work hard at your job to make sure that you've delivered on everything so that they don't contact you during those 4 days. During those 4 days, your emails will be shut and you're not going to go to church, Linda, that week. You need to pray hard enough before that. You need to be attending church every Sunday before that, so that that will be the Sunday that, or the Saturday that you don't go to church. You don't go to gym during those 5 days. It's your break from your normal life. You're going to put your energy into this thing. Okay, maybe the only thing you could do, if you are a runner, you can run between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning, just to relieve some stress, and then you're back at it. So that is what it entails. And then you're gonna get to the Wednesday, and then you're gonna drive to the venue of the exam. And then on that day, in the morning, they're gonna give you the second half of the case study, of this multidisciplinary case study. They're gonna give you the second half, which is the information on the day now. They're gonna give you what we call the information on the day, which is the second half of the case study, also referred to as IOD. Okay, so if I'm talking about IOD, you know what I'm talking about. So this IOD now, it's got, you know, those things that they said they're going to need your help on, they're actually now giving you tasks. We call them tasks. So they say, okay, we said, listen, remember we said we want to open a new supermarket in Cullinan? Yes. Actually, one of our corporate finance manager put together this NPV analysis. Can you review it for me and tell me if you've got any review notes for him? And what are the qualitative considerations that we need to take into account? Okay, what are the qualitative considerations that you need to take into account in order to make this decision? So NPV, here it is, it shows positive, meaning it's the corporate finance manager is saying we should go ahead and open the supermarket, but review it and tell us. Guys, I guess you will review it whether it's technically correct, whether the assumptions made in there are reasonable, because those are expectations or estimates. And you're going to look at the soundness of that NPV, and then you're going to give them the qualitative consideration. So that is an example of a task, okay? Or it may be an IFRS 16 task on lease accounting. And we give you this information on the day, which unpacks everything together with a task list, where we would show that, okay, here we said review the NPV analysis and give us a qualitative consideration as task number 1. And we'll have 7 or 8 or 9 tasks. So plus or minus 7 tasks for you to really work through this case study. And it will take you, or we give you 8 hours. So it's like a full day at work. It's like a full day at work kind of a situation where you are really working through every task. So time management will be quite important because you don't want to get to the end of the day, end of the 8 hours, and you've responded to 4 or 5 of those 7 tasks. Because it's like leaving 3 questions unanswered. And if you leave any question unanswered, then you will not be successful in this full exam. Even if the 6 tasks that you've answered very well, you passed all of them. But if you left a task unanswered, you fail the whole exam. Okay, so every single task needs to be responded. And often say, I see your question, can you start with any task? Absolutely. It's like any exam. You can start with any task as long as you label it. You label it correctly to say, I'm starting with task F, and then I'm going to task B, then task G. Amos, go for it.
So I just wanted to check. So after we have received the pre-released info, you mentioned, for instance, you might have pointers that for the things that you need to work on, like in the examples you gave, like leases and maybe other bodies of knowledge. Will they deviate from that in the IOD and the task list?
And let me unpack deviate. And I'm going to use some examples. They won't deviate in an extent where they say, listen, we want your help on lease accounting, which is if you will interpret it as IFRS 16, right, Amos? And then on the day, yes, they ask you questions or tasks on IFRS 15. So they won't send you, they won't lie to you, or they won't, candidates always call it tricking, or like, yeah, they won't lie to you and say IFRS 16 and then bring IFRS 15, or IFRS 16 and they bring IFRS 9, something completely different. Are you with me?
Yes.
Amos? So they won't lie to you, but they could evolve the task, meaning they could say, yes, prepare your accounting, not accounting. We need your assistance on lease accounting, right? Which you will study IFRS 16. And then on the day, they're like, actually, someone did the lease accounting. Here it is. Can you audit it for us? Does that make sense, Amos? Because now they've just changed the nature of the task, but it's still IFRS 16. They're not going away from IFRS 16 because they know you prepared your technically on IFRS 16. You need to just use that technical knowledge and say, but what is the auditor going to think about? And that's why when you prepare, be very sure that you're preparing in line with what they say, accounting treatment, or is it auditing of the IFRS 16, or is it the math of the IFRS 16, or they're not clear, and then it can be either of the disciplines. And then you need to make sure that you covered yourself on all disciplines, but on IFRS 16. So we will demonstrate to you as well in this program as to make sure that you are very adaptable on the day in case they shift it slightly in the form of the task, but not the technical. They won't say IFRS 16 and then on the day it's IFRS 15. That I would call witchcraft because it's really unfair. They will never do that. Okay. Right. So yes, so that is the multidisciplinary case study, guys. And then this multidisciplinary case study, I'm trying to assess where do I go to next. Let me stick to the left-hand side of the slide. This multidisciplinary case study is assessing you and providing you with information to make business decisions, because they want to know your business decision making and your judgment. So there will be some tasks that are asking you to make decisions and to make judgment. So your pre-release information, your IOD and your task list will have the primary information that you will use to make this decision. But you guys will also research, like I mentioned, research the industry. Make sure you understand supermarket industry very well, or mining industry, whatever case study. You've got competitors, you've read websites of the relevant or similar type of companies. You went to your technical material to go study. You studied IFRS 16 very well. You studied NPV analysis and qualitative factors, a decision-making type of research. And you've studied, and they are in here, guys. You know, some of the errors that candidates make, and I'm going to outline it here, is that some candidates think research, when we talk research, is going to websites and going to download the integrated report, download IFRS 16, putting it together and summarizing them nicely and just putting them in a file. Because remember, you're allowed to bring a file of your material that you've studied in the exam. So some candidates just think putting together a nice file with summaries of what they saw on websites, in IFRS, in a text legislation, in the math videos and slides that Rendani prepared, they think putting them together and putting them in the file and bringing them in the exam is sufficient, and that is research. That is not research. What is that? That is not research, but what is that? Come on, guys. What is that?
Just collecting
Yes,
information.
Monica?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's just compiling information, but it doesn't necessarily mean you now know the information that you've compiled.
Absolutely. It's called data collection or gathering information. It's not research. And then you know then what happens to those candidates on the day of the assessment. In those 8 hours, when then Rendani's first task say, review this NPV analysis and give us qualitative factors, they are busy. They spend an hour paging through their file, looking where the notes are that they summarized, and reading them, studying now to see whether that can fit in and become an answer. And they spend time now studying their file instead of responding, and the day goes. Okay. Guys, it's so important that the information is in here. Yes, you can bring it just in case you forgot something and you want to quickly reference it back and remind yourself to jot down your memory. But it needs to be here so that when we ask you the task, or we say, review this NPV, you immediately look at the NPV and you see that in the NPV, they've got depreciation. Then you say, it is inappropriate for us to have a depreciation line item in an NPV analysis, because that's not a cash flow. Because I know that when we do NPV, we only take relevant cash flows into account, and depreciation is an accounting concept that is not a cash flow. Do you see? I'm saying this because I know it, I've studied it. It's part and parcel of me, of my research, rather than it's sitting somewhere nicely, well formatted in my file. It may be sitting there just as a cushion, as a pillowcase, or a pillow to make sure that should I've forgotten, but it must be in exceptional circumstances. You can't write this whole exam by keeping on looking at the file. So if you see yourself on that day spending more than 10 minutes looking at the file, you know that you're actually not ready for this exam. Helen?
Thank you, Fedi, for mentioning that. I think I've read somewhere they were saying that in actual fact, like if you are efficient, this examination can take you, I think, around 4 hours. But they've is it 6 hours?
6,
but they've
think,
allocated like that extra time to for those ones who are a bit slow. Or so I think with what you're just saying, I think it makes sense that the reason why for some people it actually takes long, it is because you're actually doing that research in that examination. Because for me, it didn't really make sense that why would you want to allocate a max of 8 hours? Why do you think that this examination can actually take, okay, I thought it was 4 hours, but I see that you're mentioning 6 hours. Thanks.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Helen. Absolutely. Do not, make sure you've studied like the normal way of studying for a closed book exam. Don't think because it's an open book exam, I will do the studying in the exam, or I'll use the books or the research in the exam to answer the tasks. We're very smart individuals that make sure that if you do that, you're going to waste your time and you're not going to finish this assessment, or you will actually give us a copy and paste and we'll be able to see when we assess and say this is not a competent response. Okay, so in that, you're going to use your business acumen, your critical thinking, your technical acumen, and your ethical leadership to respond holistically to every single task. And you're going to solve complex practical problems, guys. And here, I don't want you to think of this as an exam. I want you to think of this as a problem, a complex problem at work. Because you're going to use your experience, your practical knowledge, your business acumen, your critical thinking, your technical acumen, your ethical leadership, your technical skill, guys. You're going to use everything of you to respond. Don't think about it as responding to an exam. Think about it as that email that's coming from my boss asking me various things. Let me just use the whole of me to respond to it. It's a problem-solving assessment in an integrated manner. Okay. I'm going to the right of the slide now. Well, I guess by then, guys, by the end of that Wednesday, you will be exhausted. Okay. By the time you submit that assessment, you will be exhausted. You'll take time off. Don't work that evening because I know you've been away from work for 6 days. It's okay. They were fine without you and they will continue. And then the Thursday, some people take Thursday to rest. If you've got enough leave, if you don't, go back to work. You may go on a go slow basis for that first day, but now you're back at work. And you need to rest. You need to move away from the case study. You see, from that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, generally we give you time off and say, don't think about the exam. Okay, Linda is saying don't drink after the exam. Okay. Yes. And then it's only next week, the following week, when we start saying, maybe let's start thinking about the exam, but I'll tell you about that. On our side, that's when then we start. Either we are SAICA, ICAS, or ICAN, or we are EPC, then we start thinking about, okay, the candidates have written the exam. We need to assess their scripts now, meaning we need to mark. Okay? What are we going to do? What does marking mean? Actually, it's not marking, it's assessing your level of competence, because we're not going to give you marks, guys, and say you got 49 out of 100. No. We are assessing your level of professional competence. And if you look at the top right-hand corner of the slide, the level of competence we're going to assign to you, we're going to say, you are not competent. First one, it's you didn't attempt a particular task. So it's a no attempt. So if your script is blank, it will be a no attempt. Okay, which is the fail. So everything in red is the fail. Or you're not competent. That is very harsh, meaning you wrote, but there is nothing in here that shows any level of competence. That's very harsh. And unlikely for people to be getting that, because it's really saying you're nowhere. Okay, so it's only a few candidates that get that on a task, and it's generally when you've done your task, but there's no level of competence that we can see in that task. And I'm gonna come to you, is it Diane, just shortly. Or most could be limited competence. So we see some competence, but it's not enough. It's below par of what is expected of a chartered accountant. Okay, so there is some competence, but it's below par. Those are all fail. Then there is one that is what we call borderline competent, BC, meaning you are very close to being competent. You just missed it by a small inch. You are very close. You're borderline competent. Or you're competent, or you are a distinction candidate. You're highly competent. You went above the line of duty, meaning we've asked you to do this much and you did this. So that is highly competent. Okay, so the two passes is competent and highly competent. Borderline competent is not a fail. It's not a straight pass either. Okay, so, and then the rest are fail. And I always say, especially my comprehensive candidates, can you always be highly competent, or borderline, please? Okay. If at worst, you will be borderline. Don't be like all the other candidates that are going to come in March, at the end of March. You guys must show that you have, you've started early and you are either highly competent, or if you struggle with a task, you will land on a borderline. Okay. Tiani, you had a hand on this levels of professional competence. Tiani? I think we lost Tiani. Okay, any question from anyone? Okay, yeah, go for it, Monica.
Thanks, Freddie. My question is, let's say among the 6 tasks, what if you got a limited competence on one of them? Does it mean you have failed, or what's your position?
That's a very good question. And that's where I'm going to go to next. Okay, I'm going to answer that shortly. Okay, next on the list is Nicholas.
Yeah, morning everyone. Yeah, so I also had a similar question to Monica to say like, what happens if you get like, you know, borderline on all 7? Do you pass or do you fail?
The short answer, if you get borderline competent on all 7,
All 7, yeah.
tasks, you pass.
Okay.
But I will answer it. I'll give you more information. Amos?
Yeah, well, it's also around that borderline. So what's the
Okay.
point of that borderline?
You guys, you love the eligibility criteria, I see. You want to know what is at stake. You want to know what's that gate looking like. Okay. Actually, Tsungi, BC is not trauma. For me, LC, NC, and NA are traumatic. Okay, when I see those three, I get heart palpitations. BC for me is like it's close. We call it we can forgive and flip you into competent. Of course, that's not what you want to aim for, but it's very close. Okay, so guys, we assess these things. It's a three-step approach. Okay, when we evaluate you. So how is it a three-step approach? So when there's a task, let's say that NPV task that you were reviewing, and you are able to pick up and give us a review note to say depreciation was incorrectly included in an NPV analysis when it's a non-cash flow item. And here we require only relevant cash flows. That is demonstrating competence on an indicator in the task. So each task, let's say that NPV analysis will have, let's say, 10 indicators of competence. And one of them is depreciation, how we did the tax, whether NPV is even the right methodology to use. All these are indicators that are adding up. Maybe, so we're going to look at how many indicators of competence you got, okay? And then conclude on an overall task of the 7 tasks, or what we used to call questions. Of the 7 questions, I don't want you to call them questions, I want you to call them tasks. Of the 7 tasks, then now, did you get no attempt, not competent, limited competent, borderline competent, competent, or highly competent? So what's your outcome for the task? And then we use, so we use the outcome per task to then decide on an overall level. Okay, let's go to an overall level. Oh, actually, oh yes, yeah. It was going to come a way later, but I want us to do it now because you guys are there. All right.
Sorry.
So this is how. Oh, sorry, Helen, go for it. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, no, so it's fine. Okay, I just want to understand something in relation to no attempt. Ne? So to what extent, like I've got like the task name there, task number F, I've written introduction. Is that no attempt, or I don't know if I'm making any sense? Like I should
Yes, you are.
have reached the
So-
conclusion to.
If you just said, think about the review of the NPV analysis, and you say task F, see below my review comments on the NPV analysis, and you don't give us a single review note, Helen, that is a no attempt. You agree with me? Even though you wrote something, because you just said, see below the review notes, but you did not put the review notes. That's still a no attempt. But if you put one review note and say, you say something that is wrong, maybe you say, the NPV analysis should be 1 year. Why did we do a 5-year NPV analysis? Something like that. Do you see? It's wrong. And that's the only review note. So that's not a no attempt because you did attempt something now, but it's just a no competence now because you had one review note and it was demonstrating no level of competence. So now it's a not competent. Do you see the difference?
Okay, no, I do, I get it. So if, for example, maybe I'm running out of time, I can just put like that one point in there just to demonstrate that I've actually tried to attempt that specific task. just so that I actually
but-
move away from no attempt, like in a worst case scenario.
Yes, agreed. You must always move away from a no attempt, but you must also move away from a not competent. Because if you get a not competent as well, in it, then you fail the whole case study. Do you get
Okay,
me?
no, yes.
So you need to avoid no attempt and not competent. You must have limited competence. Well, not must have, but
At
at
least.
worst, it must be limited competence. Meaning you must, let's say a candidate that say see below the review notes and the only review note they have is that one around depreciation and they get it right. And it's one review note. That candidate is not a no attempt because they did attempt. It's not a not competent because they showed some level of competence with this one indicator. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get you. Thank you.
So then it's limited competent. Is it borderline? No, it's not borderline because they still far from passing because they gave us one good thing and we needed a couple of good things from this task. Does that make sense?
100%. Thanks, Saifedi.
Thank you, Helen. Tsungi, they try to allocate enough time for all tasks. Absolutely. Sometimes you may waste time adding irrelevant points on one task and still not pass, whereas you may have added 2 points on another task, moving you from not competent to borderline competent. Absolutely. The best thing to do is just be fair to every single task. Meaning at the beginning, say I've got 7 or 8 tasks. Is it going to be an hour each? Is it going to be 45 minutes each? Whatever it is, then work on that. Yes, if there's time at the end, you can go back to do the editing. But do not sit on one task and not do the last task because that is applying for a fail. Linda?
I would think of situations where people are just not having enough points and then you end up wasting time and stretching your head and writing irrelevant things. I would think in that case, it is important that you move on maybe to a task that will give you, maybe that you are more knowledgeable of. Just don't do actually dumping and writing things that don't make sense and wasting time.
Exactly. And also I feel, Linda, you say, just say something. I want you to say something valuable that or demonstrating competence. Don't also just speak hogwash because then that is gonna still land you in a not competent. Okay. So I want to show you actually, maybe I think now we're fine. Maybe before I go to the eligibility criteria, let me finish the slide. We will do the eligibility criteria actually after the break because we're going to have a 30 minutes break. What I want to do, I want to tell you what are the things that we use to assess. So remember you guys had the case study broken into 2. Between the pre-release information and the information on the day, including the task list. You wrote, and then now you've submitted, and we're sitting with all your scripts. In our disposal, we've got a couple of things. We've got what we call a specimen solution. Guys, maybe, is everyone listening to me? The specimen solution is an expert solution. I want to be clear. It's not what we expect from you. It's what has been written by the most competent chartered accountants, the likes of Elton, Rendali, Asen, the people that have been CAs for quite some time, and they didn't write that solution under exam pressure. They didn't write it under time pressure. Okay, they wrote it in the leisure of their own comfort. So it's a proper solution, which we will share with you for learning. But don't think we're saying, well, of course, aim to be them. Okay, aim to produce that kind of a solution. But if you can't, don't be discouraged. So that is an expert solution. It has gone from Rendani drafting it to Elton sending it back to Rendani and say, address the following comments, or here are things that I would also add for Rendani to add them. So it's a really, really perfect solution by the time we share with it. Your markers will be having access to that to say, we need to read it. And then we summarize that solution into what we call a marking grid, the pointers. Did the candidate criticize the depreciation as one indicator? Did the candidate criticize NPV as an appropriate valuation tool as another indicator? So those indicators are summaries of the solution. So that's what we call a marking grid. And then maybe the marking grid can be summarized into 10 points or 10 indicators. And then there's something that is important, which we call a straw man. And you guys can never know the straw man whilst you're sitting there writing the exam. The straw man is just saying, yes, in a perfect world, the candidate will give us this 10 points or this 10 indicators of competence. But because they are under exam pressure and they're not experts yet, but what would we expect? How many of the 10 and which one of the 10 would we at a minimum expect from someone which we are willing to call a chartered accountant? Does that make sense, guys? How many of the 10 and which ones of the 10 are at a minimum what is expected of a chartered accountant? We could say the first 2, at a minimum, everyone must have them, including an additional 4. So basically, specific 2 indicators, plus any additional 4 indicators of the total 10 indicators make a competent outcome, a C.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So I even put it in the chat box. As an example,
Okay.
we are saying specific 2 indicators, the following 2 indicators, and any additional 4 indicators of the rest of the 8, out of the total of 10 indicators in the marking grid, make a competent outcome. That is what we call a straw man. This thing is called a straw man. This is a straw man. So basically, this straw man is saying we need 6 indicators out of the 10 to get you to competent. Okay, Linda, you've got a question?
So those specific are the minimum required. If you don't get those specific, we know that you have lost it.
You've lost the competent outcome.
Okay.
And there will be a reason. So we sit and say, which ones are the mark? Like a candidate could not have missed this 2. Otherwise, if they missed this 2, they cannot be called competent. You get what I'm saying? They are core to being a chartered accountant. And generally, if we have a task, and in this NPV task, maybe you know what we could have done as well. We could have indicated an element of bribery in that NPV and say payment to a government official to accelerate, I don't know what, to accelerate the opening of this or getting a license, a liquor license to operate the supermarket in Cullinan. That kind of an indicate, if a candidate does not critique and say, actually, that is inappropriate and it's against our ethical values, or it's against what we stand for as chartered accountants, even if they get 8 out of the other 10 indicators, which is showing technical competence, it's not a competent outcome because they are not ethical. They're technically good, but they are not ethical. Do you see which kind of indicators we like specifically we want them at a minimum? Does that make sense, Linda?
Yes, it does. And I would think maybe those two are linked to the competencies that you want to see in a candidate. You say these competencies we have to have in a chartered accountant.
Absolutely. We cannot forgive not having it. Absolutely. Bevan?
Hi, Freddie. I
I'm
think
glad
I've
you're
been.
back.
No, I've always been here.
Oh, because I called you at some point, because you had your hand up earlier, and then we missed you when I called you to say, come with your question. But take the stage.
Okay. You were like something of what Dylan said earlier that I said it was fine. You were going away and coming back, like so in the distance, the volume. I don't know if I'm the only one experiencing it. I don't know.
The same.
I'm also experiencing.
It's like you go.
Is
It's
it?
like you go almost quiet. It's like very faint, and then you come
Okay.
back. But in your discussions, I don't know if it's a connectivity issue.
Okay, let me change my device, use the other device. Okay, can you guys still hear me?
We can hear
Much
you.
better.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I've just changed the which device airs me. Okay, great. Helen, go for it.
Okay, thank you, Fedi. Just with regards to the question that you just mentioned regarding NPV, maybe it required me to critique like the calculations that have been provided, but this ethics issue into it. But the questions required me to critique the calculations.
No.
Which, as you are
So
speaking,
you
obviously
see-
it brings in like that integration, like what
Yes,
like
Helen.
integrate. But why? Maybe if I can, yeah. But why is that it becomes that straw man? I think you spoke about the straw man competency. Why it is
Yes.
not really the core of that specific question.
And Helen, we will not say critique the calculations. We'll never say that. Okay, we will say review this NPV analysis and tell us if indeed the corporate finance manager is correct for us to open the store in Cullinan. Do you see, we didn't focus your attention on the calculations. We say review. And we want you to bring all. Am I muted?
No, I can hear you. I think
Yes.
it's just that on the screen you reflect as muted, but we can hear you somehow.
Yes, because then I've changed the device airing
Okay.
my voice.
Oh,
Yes, unless
but I
you
can
guys
hear you
want
from
me
my
to also
side.
swap. But I'm not, yeah, I should be, you guys should be able to hear me. But maybe I'll swap. I'm saying you need to make sure that you bring all your competencies and respond holistically. We're not going to ever just narrow you into reviewing accounting or reviewing the math. Do you get what I'm saying? We will say, you're working for us, review this thing and give us any concern, any errors, anything that you see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see why I call it an integrated multidisciplinary assessment?
I know, I see, like, I get it.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Erin, as well for confirming. During the break, I'll make sure that the one that I'm going live on is the one that is unmuted. Tanya, maybe just exit and come back and you will be able to hear me. All right, where was I? Okay, yes, I was on the strawman to say, right, guys. So specific two indicators, yes, specific two indicators, and then any additional 4. So total of 6 out of the 10 will get you to a competent outcome. Okay, and when we're doing this count, guys, make sure you know that we're not counting the communication indicators. Okay. The count is generally on everything except communication. Not that communication is not important, we assess it differently, and I'll explain a bit later how we assess communication. And then, guys, what about me that gets 5 out of the 10? So I don't get to the 6. Or what about me that gets to the 6 indicators, but I missed one of the specific indicators? So I got one specific indicator that you want, and I got 5 other indicators. So I still got 6, but not your 2 and 4. Or I've got 5 indicators. Do you guys agree I'm not competent? So I got 5 indicators out of the 10 indicators. What am I?
Borderline.
You are borderline competent. You are BC. Do you see you are not far off? You are not far off from passing, but you just didn't make it. And that's a borderline. And I always say, please, if you're going to fall to borderline, guys. Don't fall beyond or below borderline. And anyone, what about someone who gets 4 out of the 10 indicators? Or someone who gets 1 out of the 10 indicators? What are they?
Woodwork, you need to go and do woodwork. 40% is not a pass, not competent.
But what is it? What level of professional competence is it on the screen?
NA. NC,
you got
sorry.
4 of 10.
Oh, that's lower LC, limited.
Limited competent, absolutely. So do you see limited competent? It will be a lot of people, well, especially at the beginning, because you could have got 4 out of 10, and someone who got 1 out of 10 is still limited. And Rendani likes this thing to say, they in the limited competent, there are some strong limited competent, and there are some very weak limited competent. Because someone who got 1 out of 10 and someone who got 4 out of 10, they're still being classed into the same category. We don't distinguish. Okay, but someone who's got 4 out of 10, don't kill yourself yet, especially at the beginning of the program, because you are closer to getting 5 or 6 out of 10. You don't have significant development issues to get to 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 versus someone who's got 1 out of 10. Okay, and someone who gets 0 out of 10, what are they? Yes, Linda?
Sorry, Fedi, not on this one.
Yeah.
So when we're doing the program and being assessed, are we going to be given marks according to this? And then you see that you got a LC of 4 over 10 or so forth.
Not marks, you mean the indicators?
The indicators, yes.
Yes, will be very clear in your script to say you achieved 4 out of 10. As a result, it's limited competent. Or you achieved 2 specific and 5 additional, which totals 7 out of 10, which is giving you competent. We will be very, very clear. And that's why we call it personalized assessment or marking and feedback that we'll give you, and what to work on going forward to make sure that you get there, and what, when we reviewed your script, you're lacking in, and what you're good at. So it's a very personalized feedback. So that you are very clear, Linda, what are the things that I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well and need to work on to become competent. Does that help?
Yes, it does. It's gonna be a tense year.
It's going to be a tense year. Okay. Gertrude, let me take your question and then we will pause after that, because then we take the 30 minutes break. Gertrude, go for it.
Okay, Fedi, how will I know that I need like 6 points to get a C? Because this, let's say it's an exam. No one is
Yes.
telling you that you need 6 points or whatever.
Absolutely. You just need, it's like submitting that work to your manager, Gertrude. The manager asked you to review an NPV report, and you review and give them review notes. Do you know whether it's enough or it's not enough? Because they're not going to say, I'm expecting you to give me 10 review notes. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
You just need to do the best of your ability and hope that the best of your ability gets you to the competent line. We are holding the cards close to our chest in terms of what is it going to be. And because of that, we are assessing which core competency. Which competency are we assessing by not giving you how many points tasks we need?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Judgment, professional judgment. For you to know how much is enough to have written in a particular task for me to move on to the next. Do you get what? Do you agree with me? It's professional judgment. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay, so that is how we assess the second step. Remember, we did 2 steps. We did the first step, which is at an indicator level. Are you getting this indicator or are you not getting this indicator? Secondly, what level of professional competence are you getting on this task? Am I 6 out of 10 candidate, which is competent, or am I 5 of 10, which is borderline, or am I 2 out of 10, which is limited, or 0 out of 10, which is not competent, or I didn't do the task, which is not attempt at a task level? That is what is in the strawman that the markers will have. And then after the break, we're going to then do the third step, which is then on an aggregate for all 7 tasks. How do I then decide whether you are competent overall or not competent, or whatever the case may be? And then we'll also do the eligibility criteria as to what gets you to be certified in our program. Okay, so we'll do all that after the break. Okay, guys? So the break will be 30 minutes and we will be back at 10:40. So a break for 30 minutes and we will be back at
10:50.
Oh, plus 30, 10:50. Thank you for correcting my maths. Thank you, guys.
Technical competence.
Thank you. Thank you and enjoy your break.